All right, here we go once again. Hello everyone, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, and welcome to the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast number 43. This is the one about Jeet Kune levels and layers. You might recall that on last week's broadcast, that was when I had the idea of splitting off this whole topic of levels and layers. Right, but I have to tell you about last night. So I finished class and I'm spending some time clearing my my queue of questions. Hey, Bo Jackson. Once again, I'm trying to train you guys to when you come on. You know, I know where you're from, but for everybody else who will see this, just put in the comments where you're logging in from, and hit the like button or something. Just do it once. You don't have to keep doing it. Although you can keep doing it if I happen to say something that you find particularly insightful, or if I say something with which you agree, then yeah, go ahead and hit the thumbs up or the like button or something, right? Anyhow, so I was telling you, it was on last week's show that I had the idea of splitting off the topic of levels and layers in Jeet Kune. But last night, I'm clearing my queue of questions on Quora.com, and I come across an old question that I thought I had answered before, but apparently I didn't. And it was, this was the question: the way Jeet Kune evolved under Dan Inosanto, is that what Bruce Lee would have wanted? So obviously I can't resist answering something like that. So I answered it, and when I answer on Quora, it's not paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of the question. I use a JKD approach, right? It's simple, it's direct, it's efficient, right? So I try to be succinct. And so I caution the reader to not misinterpret Dan Inosanto's personal martial arts journey as his declaration that what he is doing is Jeet Kune, right? Because I think that's where a lot of people make the mistake, and then they start to criticize Sifu Inosanto, right? Now, in fairness to some of the more, let's call them astute observers out there, I do agree somewhat that Sifu Inosanto does speak a little bit differently today about Jeet Kune than he may have spoken or even written about Jeet Kune in the old days, right? But as to his reasons for that, I think what we'll have to do is we'll wait until we get him on the Jeet Kune Dialogue show, and then we'll get his answers directly, right? Okay, so back to my story. So I wake up this morning, and when I check my feed, I see that overnight there's been this huge exchange between two guys on my thread, right? And so one is saying that he doesn't think that all the Kali would have been mixed in. So the other guy asked him why, and ultimately it's revealed that the first guy had trained under Jerry Poteet, right? So now, as we have discussed on this program before, there are clear distinctions in approaches between many of the Jeet Kune notables, right? So Dan Inosanto, for example, is associated with Jeet Kune, but also associated with Kali and Silat and Muay Thai and BJJ and the whole Jeet Kune concepts thing, right? Whereas somebody like Jerry Poteet, maybe even Ted Wong, Tim Tackett, they are more associated with, let's call it, straight ahead Jeet Kune, right? Now everybody has the same origin of Bruce Lee, but everybody is free to do things their own way. And that's why you have to be careful about, going out there and criticizing other people in Jeet Kune, right? So, enough about others, let's talk about us, right? Right? So, today's broadcast is all about going deep, right? Cass Magda wants, okay, so I said we would talk about others in here, about us, and now I'm talking about somebody else. But Cass once said that he took the art of Silat as his vehicle for going deep. And in some circles, he caught some flack for doing that because to their opinion, he appeared to be forsaking like Inosanto and Bruce Lee, right, and going off into this Silat thing, just like some people believe that Inosanto himself had forsaken Bruce Lee by going off into Kali and whatever. So Inosanto had forsaken Jeet Kune, right? Now, I even though I can't speak for them, I can just tell you that, you know, in my opinion, you get the knowledge of how to go deep from your experience in Jeet Kune. You see? And then you can take that knowledge of how to go deep and you can apply it elsewhere if you're thusly inclined. But that doesn't mean that you have forsaken your Jeet Kune, that you have somehow given up your Jeet Kune. You're actually using Jeet Kune and applying it, its principles, its concepts, or guidelines, whatever, to something else, right? So we'll get to that in a second, right? This is not going to be a really long broadcast or anything, right? So when it comes to martial art, the question of going deep, to me, what that means is that we are investing in our martial art education. And I was listening to this British educator recently, and she was saying that there's this idea out there that man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. And there are some people that apply that idea of man being born free, but everywhere he's in chains, that they apply that to education, as in more and more education makes you less free. But what she was saying is that the self-control and the discipline that it requires in order to become educated, even if it is educating yourself, the self-control and the discipline that's required to do that, these are the qualities that ultimately bring you freedom, right? In effect, order and structure make you free. Order and structure allow you to pursue all those avenues of knowledge. Now, I can tell you, she was not talking about Jeet Kune, but I'm listening to her and I'm thinking of all the ways in which that is true and is relevant to and applies to what we spend our time in doing in Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune, right? So she surmises that, I'll try to use my best British accent. No, I can't, right? So, but what she says is that if you learn lots, right? That's her word. If you learn lots, then you are able to apply that knowledge in different ways. And she went on to state, you know, that we all have short-term and long-term memory. And what I got from that was that that's why you need the multiple reps in your martial art training in order to convert all that stuff into your long-term memory, so that when the situation calls for it, you can readily access the information, aka skill, that you need, right? So that's why we have to have the discipline to do the reps. So let's bring it back now to a more physical idea behind it. So let's start with something central to the Jeet Kune idea, which is the 4 ranges of combat, or as we call it here in Miami, the 4 skills of empty-handed combat, right? So what comes first? Kicking, right? So let's intentionally limit ourselves to just kicking, okay, for this JKD experiment. But you don't just start out doing, you know, the 10,000 kicks one time, or the one kick 10,000. I couldn't resist it, right? So we're looking at going deep into kicking. So kicking as an attack, kicking as a defense, kicking as a counter offense, kicking in singles, kicking in combination, right? Then you have to use the same approach with punching. So we intentionally limit ourselves to punching. So punching as an attack, punching as a defense, punching as counter offense, punching in singles, punching in combination. Right there is a whole heap of cultivation that in which you would have to engage in order to develop any kind of skill in that. But now, because we have 2 skills, kicking and punching, we now have the option of going deep into looking at kicking as a counter to kicking, but kicking also as a counter to punching, and then punching as a counter to punching, which we already covered, but then punching as a counter to kicking. But we're still not done. See, so this is what I meant by levels and layers in the approach to Jeet Kune. We're still not done, because the next level or the next layer is to put kicking and punching together into what we would call kickboxing, or I'm sure somebody out there might call it box kicking, not to be confused with the rugby thing, right? But then you have to work, you have to go through the same formula again. You have to use that same structure. So now it's working kickboxing offensively, defensively, counter-offensively, and then as counters for itself. And then, so kickboxing as a counter to kickboxing, boxing as a counter to kickboxing, kicking as a counter to kickboxing, and what have you, right? And that's how you discover what's there, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, because stuff that works, for example, in kicking or kickboxing for Salem Astley, my Boxe Francaise instructor, I was showing Miguel, you guys know Miguel Colasanti, my top student in Miami. I was showing Miguel something that I saw Salem doing. I can't pull it off. Not the way that Salem does, because I don't have the level of skill that he has. So there are things that Salem could do in kickboxing that I cannot do. But it doesn't mean that I have to somehow jettison the whole idea of using Boxe Francaise, right? So anyhow, we still have to go deeper, because we've only looked at 2 of the 4 skills of empty-handed combat. Now we got to look at skill number 3, which is trapping. But we already know the formula and the approach. So trapping as an attack, as part of an attack, actually, as part of a defense, as part of counter-offense, because we recognize that trapping doesn't exist by itself. You know, punching can exist by itself because there's a thing called boxing, right? Kicking, for some people, can exist by itself. Let's say, because we all know that Taekwondo, for example, I think it's true to say that they put a heavier emphasis on kicking than they do on punching. So those 2 can exist by themselves. Trapping cannot exist by itself. You got to trap to do something. As a matter of fact, where is it? I think it's it's in Junfan Jeet Kune Do, the textbook, page 41. If you take a look in there to see what I'm talking about, the reasons for trapping, let's call it, right? You got to trap to do something. Trap to strike, trap to lock, to choke, to take down, to trip, or something. It's not just, oh, I'm trapping, right? And then ultimately, after all of that, we're still not done, because we have to go on to skill number 4, which is grappling. So grappling now has to be put into the mix, and we start again at the top, right? But because we've been doing this, it might become easier. We might be more efficient at putting these things together. So even though we start at the beginning, the so-called beginning, because it's like, okay, grappling as an attack, as a defense, as a counterattack, then using grappling to counter kicking, punching, kickboxing, or whatever. We understand the formula now. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to, that we're going to be introducing something completely new, right? So putting in all this time, this is doing all the work. This is how you educate yourself. This is how you access those different levels and layers and we haven't even talked about weaponry, because the same structure, the same formula, the same approach can be applied to your weapons training. And if you're going to be well-rounded, you got to do stuff in empty hands, and you got to do stuff in weaponry. If you're interested in being well-rounded, it's entirely up to you, right? On page 10 of this book, right? And these 2 you all know, written by Chris Kent and Tim Tackett. So on page 10 of this book, here's what they say, right? You have to develop the ability to speak the language. They say, to know it, you must study and observe it, right? So they're referring to this animal called Jeet Kune Do, right? To know it, you must study and observe it, not for weeks and months, but every day for years. Even with knowledge and training, still more is required. Maturity and a deep, see, there's that word, right? And a deep comprehension of combative principles are necessary. And that's why, as they make reference in the book, that's why Jeet Kune Do remains a mystery to so many people, in spite of all the teaching that's going on. And it's almost as if it's because Jeet Kune Do defies any easy explanation, right? Or as they say in the Jeet Kune Do kickboxing book, it is one art, but it expresses itself in many languages. It is a single entity, both an art and a science, right? Okay, that's it for today's broadcast. Jeet Kune Do, levels and layers. So feel free to share this, comment, ask me questions. I'll review everything after posting the video and answer or re-comment. Sign up for notifications on both the YouTube and Facebook, so that you know when I go live, or when the videos are posted on YouTube. Because what did Ray say? Oh, yes, it is. Oh, but I'll tell you what, Mr. Wells. Oh, big announcement. So dig this. So this Friday, Eric Paulson of Combat Submission Wrestling fame, he was supposed to be on the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues, but he can't make it because he has to travel. So tonight, come back, Facebook Live, but not at I Love Jeet Kune Do, at my personal page, at the Dwight D. Woods page. Come back, 6 p.m. Miami time, and the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues will have a special edition with Eric Paulson. But it gets better. Greg Nelson is going to take Eric's place on Friday. But it gets better even still. Next Monday, I get Rick Fay. So we have what I call the Minnesotan Viking triple header. But I don't think triple headers exist in football, do they? Right? But we got Eric Paulson tonight at 6 p.m. Greg Nelson on Friday at 3 p.m. And then Rick Fay just confirmed with me literally 30 minutes ago that he'll do the Jeet Kune Do Dialogue show on Monday at 3 p.m. Right? So that's that. You've been forewarned, right? So you're now forearmed. Remember, ILoveJeetKuneDo.com, Quick Skills video series, volume 1. I told you about the dialogues. I think that's it. Yeah, I'll see you back here next Wednesday for another episode of the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast. Until then, everybody, take care of yourselves. Those of you who might be chiming in from Virginia and the Carolinas, be safe with this whole Florence activity. We'll keep our best prayers and thoughts in mind for you. Everybody else, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you soon. Take care.